So for all of you who are here, I apologize in advance. These are not my slides. Well, they're prior Uning slides. You can see even the date is not quite right here. But we will walk our way through it because I'm sure there's a lot of similarities from previous slides, but July is not October. So we'll work our way through it. Yeah. OK, so this is supposed to be given by Uning. And he's got a lot of build slides here. And so he is on a flight to London. He couldn't make it. But he is truly here, what we are and what we do. He truly is the premium product pioneer focusing on RISC-V. So he's doing some consumer electronics, which he did, which is out in the booth there in the expo hall. And so the first RISC-V laptops available. He's done some tablets. He's done some computing devices like tablets. He's moved now to the framework model of the laptop. And then there's some fun gadgets like remote control toys, remote control cars, and even a blimp. So he's experimenting a lot. He wants to move the model or the market quickly. And especially now focusing on the compute side for laptop computing and AI servers. We'll see what's in this slide deck. But basically, he started a few marketing slides here to get through in 2023. Started with a 4-core. 2024 started with an 8-core, and then got some better distro support going on for the Ubuntu space and Fedora. And then, based on Robert Nelson, who works at DigiKey, said, why are you building the whole laptop? Why don't you work with Framework, frame.work, if you haven't heard of them. It's a modular PC architecture meant to be more sustainable, more green, more. And so now Uning Deep Computing basically builds the main board. They don't have to build the rest of the laptop. And it's a much more sustainable modular approach where you can take the main board out. You can replace all your parts, replace your modules, upgrade. So again, I'm going to skip through some of these marketing slides. But it's really a fantastic opportunity to spin out new main boards quickly. Now the challenges are, who wants these RISC-V-based boards? What are they going to use them for? What compute power do they need? Resources, time constraints, and everyone's using AI right now. So do we focus and go all in on AI? Let's see what some of the challenges are. So SWIN taped out the Sci-Fi P550 series architecture, and that's what's in the current Deep Computing Roma 2 laptop mainboard. So the mainboard has that SoC, and there's the specs there, and you can see the 32 or 64 gig and 50 tops, some of these specs. So it's actually a good compute power, and I supported Uning at the July Open Source Summit, which I think these slides were from. And at that time, I still didn't have web serial support through the Chromium browser version, and so I couldn't do the programming of microcontrollers for STEM education, which is really like micro. But I did find that the Roma 2 mainboard was now all of a sudden usable. Like the graphics weren't laggy, and I could actually use it like a real laptop. And the fact that this mainboard could be the focus, and they're now shipping the DC Roma 2 this month. But then, what about AI applications? So it becomes a lot even harder. You've got the video that Roman just mentioned in the previous talk. You've got Chrome, which isn't supported. We have Chromium, Office applications, tools, the models that you need for LLMs, the frameworks that you need for them. Where is all this software going to come from? And then the porting, of course, is endless. I will say that the updated slides are on the SCED website. So if you go there, you'll get the updated version of these slides with a few extra pretty pictures. But the challenge is definitely with, you can't read this slide, but the difference between Chrome and Chromium is basically Chrome bundles on several of these proprietary video codecs, security solutions. At the Google-sponsored breakfast this morning, Matt St. Onge was in there, and at the question and answer panel for the panel that was up on stage, they were asking questions, and he said, the one thing that holds me back from using the DC Roma 2 laptop as my daily laptop there's one application I really need support for. And thank you, Google, for sponsoring this breakfast, but I need Chrome. So that was it. And my need for web serial support through Chromium finally works with, it's still a kind of an old version, 1.29, but on Ubuntu 24. This is the first conference I've come to where I can actually plug in STEM education microcontroller and program it through the Chromium browser from my RISC-V laptop. I think it's a good, another good solution for STEM education, just like Chromebooks are very popular. You bring something low cost, decent performance, and the modularity of the framework laptop is great. So big challenge is to take Chromium and turn it into Chrome. Chrome has some closed pieces. But if you look at the market share, this one makes me sad because I actually worked for Mozilla for a couple of years, not on Firefox, unfortunately, but on the Web of Things project that was in emerging technologies. So I was there from like 2018 to 2020, and it's sad to see market share shrinking and Chromebook, but I was having battles even at the time of security features, web serial, web Bluetooth, low energy, and it's unfortunate. It's still my default browser, but I have to pull up Chrome for certain applications like STEM hardware. So Chrome is very popular, a little too much market share if you ask me. But what do we need for AI? Well, we need TensorFlow, WASM support, WebGL, WebNN, WebLLM, and there's the gentleman in the second row that's really desperate to run local models on RISC-V hardware. So what Uning's little red hands for are his priorities, and what we really want to know from you and the audience come up to us is like, what are your top priorities for software? What do you need? Start thinking about that. What can we get both at a laptop version and even at a bigger desktop tower style product? Remind me, Peter was asking some questions, and I was telling him we definitely need really good WebAssembly support and various implementations. So we basically need to do this as a collaborative community. Rising tide floats all boats. So we get more opportunities to use RISC-V in our applications, in our even daily laptops if we collaborate. Machine learning design, implementations, other web implementations, very, very popular for edge compute now. And so Uning is asking these questions, why can't we have all this software for RISC-V? Well, it's hard. You have to build for the native architecture, or can you push more of it toward the web so that you have an abstraction from the core architecture, or we need to speed up development for the core architecture. And what he wanted to announce to you all today is he's going to offer at least 100 AI startups or research university. It doesn't have to necessarily be a startup because I talked to him specifically about that. It's going to be launched soon from the website and sponsored with free hardware. So wanting to drive more contributions, more awareness to the fact that most people don't know you can run RISC-V laptops now or RISC-V desktop compute and so forth. And then we hear other stories about all these new chips coming out. So the whole idea is spin up main boards really quickly, take out your old main board, put it in a little application chassis, and then run the latest hardware. And so deep computing doesn't make chips. They take the best chips and make a main board that you can run as a processor for any types of applications. So we want to know what are those applications, find some excellent RISC-V AI contributors, and drive them with free hardware, such as free laptops, free desktop towers, racks. So essentially, the sponsorship will involve the frameworks plus AI accelerators, RISC-V, free devices to build the software you need for the AI compute you need. Awards, recognition is really valuable and powerful in the university space and research space, and even AI startups. They get lots of kudos for getting various awards. And then also just limited resources, just like I'm a strategic advisor, I'm not a deep computing employee. Speaking opportunities for summits and workshops. I shouldn't be the one standing up here someone who's doing the core development on some of these projects would be invited and paid transportation for doing some of these speaking opportunities. So it's a great opportunity. You can have questions. Myself, Marta in the second row here actually works for Deep Computing, so she can take more questions specific to the sponsorship and do the follow-ups. We've still got the booth for the rest of the day out there. And I see some experts in the room, so I thank you for your attention. And I can ask your questions, and I can point to others to answer additional questions. Thank you. Wait, you've got to wait for a microphone so they can record the question.
So Google wound up putting together Chromebooks years ago for this kind of stuff. This sounds an awful lot like a Chromebook strategy, and they wound up having I kind of wondered why that thing petered out. And so if you could analyze why that is, why they petered out and why this is not going to, that'd be great to hear.
So one of the challenges, I also worked for a company called Qualcomm, which had chipsets in some of those Chromebooks. And one of the problems really with core architectures of any sort for Linux-based distros is the upstream kernel support. I mean, let's face it. You don't do... It is the crux of the problem, upstream kernel support. And then, if you don't do upstream kernel support, then you're stuck with a downstream, I was at Qualcomm in the Wi-Fi router group when Qualcomm acquired Atheros, and then they handed us, we were using MIPS architectures at the time, back in the early 2000s, mid-2000s. My days are on. But they said, OK, you're using MIPS. Oh, just swap that out, and here, use our Qualcomm ARM cores instead, and then put in the Wi-Fi and stuff like that you need. Then they handed us an Android kernel with 2 million lines of diffs outside the kernel, and they said, turn this into a Wi-Fi router. But that was like a non-starter, right? So I think one of the core problems even with the Chromebooks is that Google's not doing a good enough job of upstreaming in partnership with the semiconductor companies, because they should also be responsible for upstreaming those cores at the like Roman said in the previous talk, at the design level, not waiting even for the chips to take out. You have the design specs, even if they're not open on the ARM side. You should be building and upstreaming those kernels. Just listen to Greg Crowe-Hartman about that. So I think that's why the Chromebooks, the Chromebooks weren't being kept up to snuff. And they're very popular in the US. I'm not sure what the difficulty is in European markets, but I do hope that something based on RISC-V that's completely open takes off.
So let me repeat your answer. It's an integration problem. You wound up having these pieces there and they weren't integrated. And you feel that basically an open source approach with people in different companies kind of pulling this stuff together on the fly, that's going to solve that issue?
I'm hoping that because there's less resources to do it all yourself, when you do it all yourself, then you struggle with the in-house development not invented here. And the way the kernel works is you rely on the whole community, and you are dependent on the community. It takes you a little longer, but you get something that's supportable in the long term that you don't have to e-waste as fast.
So that'll get me to my second question. I'm not a member of the community. I'm a person that wants to use a final product integrated to make this thing work. Any advice you'd give me to go on and make sure I don't wind up creating a Chromebook?
So you don't end up creating a Chromebook? Yeah, well, I'm a big fan of the framework model, because then the hardware is sustainable and replaceable, even the little bits and pieces. And then on the software side, the whole goal is to stay away from one dictating company that is the only one who can upgrade, and you allow flavors and distributions based on the common upstream kernel.
So appropriate vendor selection.
Yeah. And do you have an answer you want to provide to this question? Yes, add a comment. And we can follow up on this more later, but comment?
So the comment is actually not related to Chromebooks, but I just want to make sure I say it before we run out of time. Basically, the thing on the slide about WebAssembly, I ran into Yuning leaving yesterday, and he was kind of explaining the same thing. So the WebAssembly has a SIMD extension, and that SIMD is affixed with 128 bits SIMD. So there's some challenges running it on RVV. I mean, you can still run in fixed size mode and it should work. But first of all, if you have a 256, like more than 128 bits, right, then you might not be getting all the benefits you could be getting otherwise, right, and it will be not as fast as you would expect. And also, probably there's some performance still left on the floor because it's not flexible, not scalable vectors, but actually fixed lengths. So there's a proposal to WebAssembly to fix that would actually add scalable vectors to WASM. And so it's sort of been in development limbo for a few years. So maybe some data out of this would be actually a good driving factor for it to move a little faster.
Yeah, and you're a perfect example of someone who knows some of the industry and open community software problems that have to be resolved. And, and then we have to get all the way to the top of the vertical stack of the application providers, right? It's not me, is it? No, okay. So it is a challenge, it's a significant challenge of software and hardware coming together and keeping it as open as possible at the base layer, and then allowing the flavors of domain expertise and application expertise to be given to system integrators, service providers, edge, AI, all of those things is where people gain the value. It shouldn't be at the low level software, hardware. Yeah, 14 seconds. So that'll be it, and come by the booth if you have more questions.